Are you searching for a deeper understanding of yourself and your place in the world? Do you yearn for more balance, more peace, and purpose in your life? Well, look no further than the Intuitive Revolution podcast, your trusted source for holistic insights and intuitive guidance. I'm your host, Alicia Faricelli, and I am ready to take you on a journey to inner peace and balanced well-being. Brad, I'm so excited that you have joined us today on the Intuitive Revolution podcast. Thanks so much for joining in. We have some amazing conversations coming up about holistic health and your journey. Can you get started and tell us a little bit about how you got started in holistic health? What was your journey getting to this point?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, thank you, Alicia, very much for having me here. This is awesome to be a guest on your Intuitive Revolution podcast. Yeah, that's the $1 million question. What got me started? I got to dig deep into memory banks, go back about 15 years ago, the very beginning of my journey. I describe myself as your typical overweight, lethargic couch potato. That's who I was. I had no direction in my life, no meaning, no purpose. Nothing really. I was just working, eat, sleep, work. That was my life. And I had gained a bunch of weight. I gained 50 pounds, and it was all for men. It all goes to our belly. And so I had the Santa Claus belly going on. And I tell this story often, but I still remember it very vividly, like it was yesterday. It was November of 2009. I was sitting in my bedroom on my bed, and I just looked down at myself and disgust at what I saw and what I had become, and just like how can I do this? Now here's where the story gets crazy. So I made a vow to myself, a promise to myself to change, to become healthy, start living a better lifestyle. And here's where it gets crazy. So now jump ahead in the story to November 2010. Nothing had happened. Nothing had changed. I didn't start any program. I didn't exercise. I didn't lose any weight, nothing. So literally a year later, November 2010, I was back in the exact same spot, sitting on my bed in my bedroom, just mortified. Like, how did this happen? I thought for the longest time I was a healthy person, but I was like just disgusted. That was the emotion that got me to propel myself. That was rock bottom for me at that point, was that emotion of being disgusted with myself. Now, this is the very beginning of my journey. So I know you and I have talked, Alicia. I didn't know anything about inner child then. I didn't know anything about self-love, about mindset. I didn't know anything about anything. But anyway, November 2010, that time I made a promise to myself. But this time I like to say I had one secret ingredient that I didn't have the year before. And this is, I think, the secret ingredient that makes a lot of times the difference between success and failure with something. So I clearly had failed the first year. I, didn't lose a single pound. I didn't even start a program. I didn't even try.
You didn't fail. You didn't even start.
I didn't even start. Yeah. But the second year, I like to call it the secret ingredient, determination. This time I was determined to and my initial goal was to lose weight. I was determined to lose weight. Now I'll jump around a little bit. So jump ahead a few years in my story. I realized later on, a couple of years later, that was the wrong goal. Having the goal to lose weight was the wrong goal. I'll get to that. I'll get to that in a minute. But for anyone listening, yeah, one of the biggest mistakes we make on this journey with becoming healthy is we have a goal to lose weight. And I can't emphasize enough, that's the wrong goal. But I'll get to that. I'll get to that here later. So anyway, so I jumped on board with a program, one of those 90-day home health fitness programs that a coworker told me. I don't want to say which one because I don't want to give a free promo to it, because I don't think this is actually, to be honest. But anyway, I went all in. And the special thing about this program, again, my initial goal was to lose weight, but with this program, it was not to lose X amount of pounds or anything like that. My goal was to finish the 90 days, to finish this program. I didn't care what it took. I was going to get through this 90 days if I had to crawl, kick, scream. But bear in mind, this is being fueled by determination of not having done anything that first year. So I finished the 90 days and I lost 30 pounds. Yay, great. However, I hadn't changed my mindset. I hadn't changed thing that I ate at all, because this program didn't teach me any of that. It didn't teach me about mindset. It didn't teach me about what to eat or what not to eat. It didn't any. So at the end of the 90 days, I had no clue. What do I do now? What's next? So within the first 2 weeks of that program finishing, I gained 12 pounds back. Now, this is where it gets crazy. So that finishing that 90-day program was an external goal. I didn't understand the difference at that time either between an external goal and an internal goal.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what else to do. So I set another external goal. I signed up. I'm a big fan of those adventure, like nature shows where you go out and try to survive in the wild on your own and
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was one called Man versus Wild, I think, with Bear Grylls or
I
something.
think I've seen that before.
Okay. So anyway, so I wanted to do something like that. So I actually found one. You can actually do it. You can sign up and do a trip like that. So I was living in the Northwest at the time. So I signed up for one of these. It was in the state of Washington, in the Yakima Valley area, which is kind of between Seattle and Pullman, or Tacoma and Pullman, kind of in the middle of the state, just around the Cascade Mountain Range. But anyway, it gave me something to train for. So I had an external goal. So if you're at the very beginning of this journey, have an external goal, yes, and make sure it excites you. That's part of the issue that goes on, why so many people fail and fall off the quote unquote diet bandwagon or diet and exercise bandwagon. The goal doesn't excite them, for one, and two, it's an external goal. But anyway, so I set this goal. I'm going to complete this program, and I did it. I trained for another 90 days, lost the 12 pounds again. So I've been able to keep the 30 pounds off. I hadn't fully grasped still about internal goals, about, the mindset, about any of this, but I made it through, the 90 days, and I did this week-long program, and it was tough. I'm not gonna lie. It was real man versus wild, but we had some great people and great guides. And I was about 40, no, I was actually, yeah, I think about 40 years old at the time, maybe 39. I'm 51 now. So yeah, it was about 13, 14 years ago. But anyway, at the end of the program on the van ride back, one of the younger participants in their 20s goes like, "Wow, Brad, you're in really good shape." And I'm like, "Oh, that's kind of cool. Thank you." I didn't think
Okay.
But here's where my life turned, and this is one of the many steps. So I got home from that, same thing happened again. I don't
Mhm.
know. Okay, now what? I didn't have another goal. So what immediately happened the first week back, I gained 6 pounds again because I didn't really know what was going on. So this is where my life changed, and this is what began my journey. And this is for anybody listening. This is. I used to think this was the start of your journey, what I'm about to tell you, but I now realize this is the second step in your journey, and I'll get to that in a second. So what happened to me? About 3 weeks after I got back from this trip, I was in my garage, and I had kind of a mini home gym that I had built and set up for myself, and I was doing the bench press, and like, oh, come on, come on. And I was just bored. I wasn't motivated, none of this stuff. I didn't know anything. So I put the bar back on the rack. I stood up and I asked myself a question just completely out of the blue that changed my life forever. And if you're listening, this is the question you need to ask yourself. And the question I asked myself was, why? Why am I doing this? This is the why. So everybody says it starts with why. It actually does not start with why. That's what I learned later on. So that's why I say now this is step 2. But at the time, this was actually my step 1. So why am I doing this? And then it hit me like a ton of bricks. This is what I call my first epiphany, my first miracle. The ceiling on my garage opened up. I like to say the bolt of lightning came down and struck me and all that. And it said, and this is in part because of the trip I had done, that if I take care of my mind, body, and spirit, my mind, body, and spirit will take care of me. That
Wow.
became why. That became my driving force behind everything. That became really day one of my journey that began to lead to this healthy, holistic lifestyle. Now let me jump ahead and skip some various parts of the story, but that only became, at that time, I thought that was part 2 of the journey, or excuse me, part 1 of the journey. But what I realized about 2, 3 years later, that's actually part 2. What became part 1 Over the next 2, 3 years, I struggled with what is called, I think they call it the yo-yo cycle. Like you gain the weight,
Mhm.
you lose the weight, you gain the weight, you lose the weight.
Yeah.
That was me. I would gain 5, 10 pounds, lose it, gain 20 pounds, lose it, everything like that. Until I realized it's not about losing weight.
Ah.
Okay. It's about, and in a lot of my literature and my videos I've done, I talk about this. It's about defining who you are. And that is your point one. It's about deciding, choosing who you are. And somewhere along that way, I made the decision to be healthy. That I, Brad Carlson, I am healthy. When I made that decision, everything in my life changed because then everything became, it no longer became about being in shape or being on a diet or losing weight or anything like that. It became the singular focus of being healthy. Back then, if you would have asked who is Brad Carlson 3 years into the journey, I would have said I am health. Health is who I am. I am healthy. People talk about their authentic self. Well, that was my version of my authentic self, and that's still very much true today. But that became point one. That became your starting point. So choosing your identity, your vision of who you are, who you want to be, that has to be point one in your journey. Everybody skips that. Everybody skips the part one, choosing your identity. They skip the part two, choosing your why, and they go right into the doing. What can I do to, this to lose weight, or what can I do to be healthy? It's choosing to be healthy. So that became the major focal point, which has led to everything. Jump ahead now, 15 years later is where I am today with my own podcast and my own books and everything like that. But that one decision, choosing to be healthy, is what set the difference for anyone. So I would tell anyone listening that is your first step on this path of whatever you want to change your life, to transform your life. Create that new vision of you, that new identity of you, and choose to be that person. And then part two is, what is your why? Why do you want to be this person? So I actually had those reversed, and then I had to go back and reverse them again. But my why was, if I take care of my mind, body, spirit, my mind, body, spirit will take care of me. And that still drives me to this day. And so I've been on this journey 14, 15 years now, have never lost momentum. And I'll jump ahead a little bit more in the journey too. So I had initially lost 30 pounds. And once I decided I wanted to be healthy, I was able to keep that 30 pounds off, no more yo-yo. But I still had 20 more pounds to lose. For men, we tend to hang on to that gut. So that last 10, 20 pounds. And women too, it can be somewhere a little bit different. But I was able to lose the last 20 pounds in 2018 when I created a program called intermittent eating. People
Okay.
are people are familiar with intermittent fasting. My program, intermittent eating, is a little bit different, and that would be an entirely another podcast to explain that. But that's what allowed me to lose the additional 20 pounds. So I lost 50 pounds total, and I have been able to keep it off for the most part. Now I put on a little bit of muscle in the last couple of years too, so I'm not, I'm about 5, 6 pounds heavier. But right now, I weigh what I did my senior year in college when I graduated college, and all my vitals are where they're supposed to be. I'm very healthy, fit, 51-year-old. Now, just to add one more part to the story. Thanks, Alicia. So in the beginning, I chose to be healthy, but that focused on physical health. The healthier, the fitter I got in terms of being in shape. I was doing marathons, I was doing triathlons, I was doing Spartan mud runs. The fitter I got, the less healthy I got mentally and spiritually.
Mm.
Because I didn't realize, again, back then, that there was a mental component to this, there was a spiritual component. So again, jump ahead now. Over the past year, 2 years, I've added, I am happy, healthy, and inspired. So if you ask who is Brad Carlson, say I'm happy, healthy, and inspired. And that's why my new tagline is live happy, healthy, inspired, because I chose this identity for myself. Now we're always growing and expanding, and I won't get into this, but I've even taken that identity of myself and push that to what I call the next 2.0 version of happy, healthy, inspired. But it's all about choosing who you are in the beginning, making that decision, understanding your why, and that forms the basis of who you are. So that's that's the short version, and gives some insights and all that, how I got started on this journey and how anyone can get started on this journey. It's one thing to get started on the journey. It's another thing to continue and sustain the journey. And what will continue and sustain any health journey, any holistic health journey, regardless of the modality you use, if you use traditional modalities or like a weight room, or more of the that we've inherited from like the East, like Tai Chi or yoga or any of those, or sound healing, meditation, whatever it is, what will sustain you is understanding your identity, who you are, and understanding your why. And then I throw in a couple other adjectives. So determination got me through. You've got to be committed to achieving, to being that person. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it asked a great question. Are you interested in being that person, or are you committed to being that person?
Yeah,
Big difference.
yeah, two big things.
Big difference. Big difference. So I committed in the beginning to being healthy. I went all in because I had a solid why. So you've got to commit, choose that person that you want to be, commit to being that person and go all in. And through part of this process, I didn't know anything about mindset. I had to learn to completely do a 180 shift on my mindset. And so I remember another part of the story. One day I was at the health department, and there was a plate of donuts and cookies and everything in front of me. Those are my kryptonite. To this day, still it is. But I went to pick up one of the donuts. My favorite was a glazed strawberry donut with sprinkles, and I went to pick it up, and it's like literally, and I'll just say this: the universe grabbed my hand and like stopped, wouldn't let me pick it up. And this question, I don't know how, it just came to me. It said, if I eat that donut, will it help me to be that point B person? Will it help me to be that person that is healthy? And that was an eye opener. And I went, oh, no, 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 it won't. And then somehow, I don't know how this happened, this question came to me. What can I eat that will help me be that person? And this is the funny part of the story. The answer that just came into my mind that day was spinach. I hadn't eaten spinach my entire life. I had not eaten any spinach at all. So I went to the farmer's market right after work that day. I bought spinach, I bought kale, I bought romaine lettuce, I bought every type of leafy green that you could buy. And that was the moment that started the mindset shift, that started the healthy eating shift. That's when I for the first 3 years I was still eating really poor, but that's what began my journey into eating healthier, eating better, began my journey into completely reprogramming and reframing my mindset. So it's definitely a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. Like I said, I've been on this 13 years, but 14, 14, I can't do math anymore, 13, 14, 15 years. What will sustain you, what I tell everyone, is make that decision. Who are you? Who do you want to be? Understand your why, commit 100% to being that person, and make sure that person, that it feels right. I could have chosen, instead of to be healthy, I could have chosen to be like a business entrepreneur, but that didn't feel right. So it's got to feel right. So whoever you're working with, whoever's listening, choose something, a higher version of you, a higher vision of you that feels right, that you just know you're meant to be. It kind of, just fell into that. But later on, when I understood that there's a spiritual component to this, a emotional and mental component, I added happy and inspired. So happy, healthy, and inspired is who I am. That's what I bring to the world. And that's my underlying reason for everything. And now it's just, you go all in and have, as you're doing, Alicia, you just have fun with it. So
Yeah.
Hope that helped. I don't know.
Yeah, that was awesome. So what I loved about what you said was, we have so many people that are like, well, I'm just who I am. It's like predetermined for me. You decided your identity. So a lot of people think, well, my identity is this because this happened to me, or my identity is this because I'm just who I was born into be. You actually went through and said, no, this is not my identity, is what I choose it to be.
Yeah. I thought my identity was a lazy, overweight, lethargic couch potato. And then I realized one day, oh, that's not true. So all those people are stuck in a story that doesn't work for them. I would ask, how's that story working for you? Are you excited about life? Are you happy? Are you happy, healthy, and inspired?
Yeah.
If you are, then great. Keep on. But if you're not, what if we were to make a change?
So
what would happen?
How would someone, like, if the first step they said, you know what, I'm super frustrated with my health the way I am, but I don't know where to get started, what to do. There, because we can get so stuck on something that we just almost freeze and we don't know, like, what's the first step to do? What advice would you give them?
That's funny because you just asked the question, what do you do? And that's the first question always people ask. And what I say is that's the wrong question to ask.
Yeah.
The question you need to ask yourself is, who am I? Because again,
Yeah.
it's about creating the identity. Because if you put the doing first, like I did in the beginning, you're going to get on the yo-yo cycle. You're going to start, stop, start, stop, start, stop, because you don't know who you are. You don't have that identity.
Yeah.
So I would say, to answer your question, that's the wrong question. Do not ask, what do I do question. Ask, who am I question. That will get you a lot further. We're not trained to ask that question in our culture and our society. We've got it reversed. We want to know what to do first, but that's wrong. We have to know who we are first. Like I said, the first 3 years I was on the yo-yo cycle, on again, off again, on again, off again, gain weight, lose weight, all that. I had my why, but I wasn't fully committed. I wasn't fully sustainable the journey because I didn't know who I was. When I made a decision and switched from losing weight to my identity being who I am, that's when the journey became sustainable. So your question, what do? I would say, ask yourself the question, who am
Yeah.
I? That's
Yeah.
what you do. That's the very first thing you do is ask yourself, who am I? And decide who you are in terms of what you want to be. I wanted to be healthy. What do you want for your life? Do you want to be a millionaire, an entrepreneur? I've done that and it just doesn't feel right for me. I think there's just something weird about that for me, but that's just me.
Mhm.
Uh, but that is part of my 2.0 version of happy, healthy, and inspired. But I had to get to the 1.0 version first. But ask yourself, so what do you do? Get your journal out, who am I? And just start writing and come up with that identity that feels right for you and your journey. For me, it happened to be healthy. Later on, I added happy and inspired. So that's the first thing that you do is answer that question, who am I?
Yeah. I loved how your journey started off with almost kind of superficial, I'm going to call it, mentality of, I want to lose this weight so I look better, or I want to lose this weight because it's just what I need to do. But then you really dug
I
into
was,
the why
yeah,
and because you didn't feel good about yourself. But instead of taking that and like feeling, I don't feel good about myself. Yes, you need to change that. What's going to make you feel good about yourself? But you really dug deep into that and found really a connection to it, through the mind, body, and then spirit, connecting those together, where I felt like that's where a lot of people start falling off the bandwagon. Is like, you lose weight, you look good, but you're still not feeling good about yourself because you haven't did that inner work inside to actually accept who you are. Even with the way that you look, you still have to love yourself at that point, but know that because I love myself, I want to be the best version of myself. And so when you
yeah.
tie those two together, that's when I feel like transformation happens. And I love that seems to be your journey with what you did.
It's interesting. The inner child work, I learned that much later. The self-love, it's taken me a long time. I suffered immensely from very low self-esteem, low self-confidence, just really rock bottom in terms of, self-worth, self-esteem, self-confidence.
Yeah.
I've been able to break through all of that and have very high levels of self-esteem and self-worth now. The one thing I've learned too, I've had so many breakthroughs and epiphanies, but about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, I'm just doing some more inner work and journaling and meditation and whatnot. I came to realize that I call it my joie de vivre, my joy of life. My joy of life, if any person listening to this now, if your joy of life, your happiness, your peace, your prosperity, your joy, your excitement about life, your inspiration, your enthusiasm, if any of that, I call all that your joy of life. So if your joy of life, if any of that is tied to what you are doing, or what you are not
Mhm.
doing, to what you are saying, or what someone says to you or doesn't says to you, like in a relationship, if it is tied to something material, what you have or what you don't have, and I'm going to go out and say this too, to what you look like in terms of body
Yeah.
shape, or what you don't look like, you're going to struggle, and you're going to always struggle, because that's called conditional joy of life. My joy of life is conditioned on X, Y, and Z. You're going to have a very, very hard time meeting your own conditions and expectations that you set for yourself. And so we come into this idea of non-attachment. This is a very deep spiritual concept, very deep spiritual principle. But when you realize that you can have your joy of life your happiness, your peace, your prosperity, all of that. And it's not dependent on what you do, what you don't do, what you say, what you don't say, what somebody says to you or doesn't says to you, or what you have or don't have you. That is true freedom. That is what I
Yeah.
call freedom. That is the root of happiness, when you are not
Yep.
attached and when you are not dependent on any of those factors. Because here's the difference. And again, I learned this the hard way. So the first 7 years of my journey, I became an endurance athlete. Marathons, triathlons, the Spartan races, every 5K, 10K I was signing up for. I thought I was a bad dude. I was on top of the world. Look at me, I'm doing all these races. Wasn't until about year 8 or year 9 of my journey, so just about 4 or 5 years ago, I realized I did all that for the wrong reason. I did
Mm.
all of that because I thought, if I don't do this, I'm not good enough. If I don't do this, I'm not worthy enough. My self respect still was very low. My self esteem, my self worth, my self appreciation still didn't fully understand inner child work, any of that. And so what happened, my joy of life had become codependent on doing all these races. And that's why I said I was getting fitter, from a physical perspective, but health wise, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, I was getting worse and worse. I was getting worse. My
Yeah.
energy was getting actually worse. It came to a point where my energy was actually crashing. And that's because my joy of life was dependent on all of this. Now, once I finally realized just about 2 years ago that my joy of life, and so let me back up. And so what that meant was I was doing all of these things, the races, everything, out of fear. Because if I didn't do them, I wasn't going to be good enough. I wasn't worthy
Oh,
enough.
wow.
This
Yeah.
validated who I was. And I realized that that's not true, because I was attached to all those things. This was defining me, Brad, as not just healthy, but as a recreational athlete. And it gave my ego a big boost when I'd come into
Yeah.
work the next day. How'd your race go, Brad? Did you get top 10 or, whatever? And that's another story too. And so when I realized this idea of non-attachment, that your joy of life should not be conditional, but it's unconditional, it doesn't matter what's going on in your life, then all of a sudden you can do the same thing. You don't change what you're doing, you change why you're doing it. And so then I went from a place doing all this stuff for fear, because I thought all this validated who I was, my worthiness, to still doing it, but from a place of peace,
Yeah.
joy, because I realized my identity, my love, my joy was not dependent on that. That I am worthy, even if I don't do all this. That I am enough. That I am. I can have self respect. I can have self love, regardless of all of that. And so when you break through that, if you're 100 pounds overweight, male, female, whatever, trans, whatever you are, that's fine to lose weight. But what I'm saying is lose weight from a place of peace, because your joy of life, you feel good about yourself, shouldn't be dependent on you losing weight. It's dependent on who you are, your identity, and accepting who you are. If you can't accept yourself at 100 pounds overweight, you're still going to have a very hard time accepting yourself at 100, losing that
Yep.
100 pounds. And a very, very 9 out of 10 times you're going to gain that back, unless your discipline is just off the chart. I don't know anybody that has that much discipline. This is why so many people struggle with weight loss, and that they gain it back, is that they've done it for the wrong reason. They tied their identity and their self-worth to losing weight and their self-esteem. And I'm saying untie that. It's the principle of non-attachment. This has been taught by many.
Mhm.
Buddha taught it, Krishna taught it, Yogananda taught it.
Yeah.
Many of the great spiritual people throughout history have taught this idea of non-attachment. And so that's what made the difference for me too. That, yeah, your joy of life is unconditional. It doesn't matter what's going on. And the more you stay seated in that mindset, that consciousness, the more that the outside world doesn't affect you anymore, because you know who you are. So I've gone very far and deep with this journey. So I could say who I am at my center is a light of peace.
It
And
sounds
it's
like
only
you, yeah,
don't
sorry.
when I let someone disturb that, yeah. So anyway, yeah.
Sounds like you just cut out the outside noise. You have like all these people coming in saying, "Oh, great job, big job." But you're kind of in the inside being like, "Well, in order for me to have the great job, I have to continue to do another one and show up for all these other people." So when you cut the outside noise out and really dug into yourself about what makes me happy, what makes me fulfilled, the races were, is the joy and the fun behind in the race and probably the competitiveness of it inside the actual race, but not the outside exterior motivations from other people. When you cut that out and started tuning into yourself, it sounds like that's when you started to find the real joy and peace.
Yeah, initially my validation of just me as a person and my self-worth was dependent on these races and other people. And then when I
Yeah.
realized that was a lie that I had been telling myself, again, non-attachment, then I
Yeah.
could have self-worth. Then my self-worth went shot through the roof. My self-worth, my self-esteem, and all of that. And that's when I really dug into the inner child work and began self-love, self-respect,
Yeah.
self-appreciation, self-validation. It really does. I mean, if I were to start this journey completely over from scratch, I would again start with identity. And then I would immediately start with the self love, self respect, the inner child work, the self validation, and all of that. I wouldn't even, I mean, I would go for a walk too, just because I like walking and walking is good for you. But I would do those three things like in the very beginning. If I was completely starting from scratch, I would do my identity, do all the inner self love, self appreciation work, and then just start walking and just
That's it.
really keep those three up and determine, commit 100% all out. And then you're going to continue to evolve as the journey continues. So.
Yeah, it's amazing when people think they have this end goal in mind, but if they haven't did the inner work, when you reach that goal, no matter what it is, you're never going to be satisfied until you
Yeah.
actually figure out, again, like you said, your purpose. Like, why are you even getting to this goal? Well, it's to make you feel better. Well, is this goal going to make you feel better, or is there other things inside of yourself that you need to work on to get to that place
Yeah.
before you
If
can
you're
hit that
feeling
goal?
better, yeah, if you're feeling better is tied to you achieving the goal, let's take a step back and do some more inner work because that's a conditional attachment. And I'm saying, and that means you're doing this goal from a place of fear that if I don't do this goal, I won't feel good, I won't be worthy, I won't be enough, whatever. And I'm saying, do the same goal, don't change the goal unless the goal is just completely unrealistic or just doesn't excite you or
Yeah.
whatever. But I'm just saying, change the motivation behind why you're doing the goal. There are two motivations that drive human nature. One is fear, one is love.
Yep.
And I'm saying keep the same goal, but do it for love. And the way you can do the same goal from love is exactly what you just said. You do the inner work, the inner child work, the self love, the self appreciation, the self respect. This is like training for a marathon, but with inner child work. You wake up every day. I put my hands over my heart and I just say, I love myself. I love who you are. I love you,
Yep.
Brad. I love this about you, Brad. You know, I love your nose. I love your ears. I love that you're bald. I love that you're weird fingers, whatever. I just slowly over time built that up. I trained that inner child muscle, and one day I just finally woke up and like, oh my god, I do love myself. Whoa! You see, I'm
That's
smiling.
so cool.
I do respect myself. I do value myself, and it just went on from there. And then when I had that epiphany that yeah, the my joy of life is not conditional or dependent on anyone or anything or having this or having that. It's just that is a very high sense of just interpersonal peace and freedom. So
So you're working on some books or a book. Tell us more about it.
okay, well I have it right here actually. If it's okay, can I show it?
Yes, please do.
So everything I've been saying, it's in
Oh, I
my
love
new
the
book.
cover.
It's
Yeah.
called Take Back Your Life. Yeah, it's available on Amazon right now. You can just go to Amazon, Google my name, Brad Carlson, and look for Take Back Your Life, and it's right there. But a lot of what we've been talking about today is in the book, and the book goes into a lot more detail too. So, and everything, the book details my entire 14-year journey, the mistakes I've made, what I learned, choosing your vision, your why, all of that, and the health program I created out of all this, and yeah, all that. So.
Awesome. So if people want to reach out, they want some additional training or coaching or to want to learn about your program, how do they contact you?
Yeah, the easiest way, honestly, right now is just my Facebook. So just go to Facebook and search my name, Brad Carlson. I'm real easy to find. I have a professional profile there. You'll see my face and just follow me there, and yeah, you'll get everything right there. So that's the easiest way.
So any final notes for our listeners here about getting started on their journey, or what if they're in the middle of their journey and they're frustrated?
I love that question because I asked you that same question on your end too. So yeah, my final word would be, find your identity, find who you are, and love yourself for who you are. your love of yourself should not be based on how much you weigh or how much you look like. If it does, that's okay. That's not it. We all have it. It just means we need a shift. It just means we're coming from a place of fear, and everybody does it. It's not that big a deal. So let's just shift from a place of fear to a place of love. Find who you are and start with that self-love, and then everything from there will take care of itself.
Well, this has been fascinating learning more about you and your journey. Thanks so much for sharing.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. That was fun today. Thank you.